Welcome to our conversation about the nature of reality and the power of our consciousness. Today, we will be applying timeless wisdom to solve modern problems. Hi, I'm Adam Hall, and I'm excited to be here with Ervin Laszlo, who has another book to share with us, The Wisdom Principles. Our discussion will focus on consciously evolving from our, let's just say human 1.0 nature to our human 2.0 nature. We will focus on the most powerful force in the universe, consciousness, and how we can build a bridge to the highest and best versions of ourselves. We will discuss the nature of reality and why it matters as never before. We will explore a solution to the problem created by the bifurcation of our consciousness. And most importantly, what can you do to thrive during this coming period of great earth changes? The challenges and crises are many, my friends. Our climate reality is daunting, yet the opportunities are great. In many ways, at least from this one soul's perspective, our outer climate crisis is a mirror of our inner climate consciousness crisis. In other words, the outside picture is a reflection of an inward condition. Quite simply put, when we unconsciously function separate from our authentic selves, our each other and nature, we create crisis. And that's when the Darwinian notions of survival of the fittest kick in. And of course, we are complex beings. And the good news, according to our guest, is that higher levels of complexity lead to higher levels of coherence. These extraordinarily complex challenges offers us, let's just explore extraordinarily simple solutions if we make conscious, informed decisions. Today, Ervin and I will help you apply your wisdom and knowledge to make informed decisions that will support you to live your best life and help make the world a better place. And I think by any measure, at least most of us would probably agree that we've reached a choice point for our humanity. And will we consciously evolve or will we consciously de-evolve? Our ecological and biological scientists say we have reached a punctuated point in our ecological and biological and psychological evolution. In other words, the rate of change is happening in a very short period of time. And this is bearing out with the destruction of 65% of our biodiversity, according to the World Wildlife Federation. Some say that we've now entered into the sixth mass extinction because that indicator of punctuated point of evolution was a precursor to our previous extinction periods. So whatever the case may be, we are most certainly entering into a hyper rate of change. And if you think about it, if what's happening on the outside in our outer ecological environmental conditions, what's happening on the inside? In other words, what's going on with our biological and psychological state. And if it's changing so rapidly in our external environment, is it not changing rapidly in our internal environment? And perhaps that's the invitation to quantum leap into our conscious evolutionary nature. So let's explore this and more with our guest, Ervin Laszlo. I'm excited to be here with an extraordinary soul. His genius and wisdom for the last several decades have been a beacon in the night. He was nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize. Dr. Laszlo is a recipient of the Luxembourg Peace Prize, the International Matter of Peace Prize in Assisi, and the Goji Peace Award in Japan. He is the editor of the prestigious periodical World Futures, the journal of the New Paradigm Research. He is founder and president of the international think tank, the Club of Budapest, founder and president of the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research. He is the author of more than 100 books that have been translated into 24 languages, including his latest book, The Wisdom Principles. This book is a timeless piece of wisdom for the ages, friends. A treasure trove of practical insights and solutions to real world problems. I encourage you to check it out. Welcome, Ervin.
Adam, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for this invitation again. It's my pleasure.
You bet. Well, let's talk wisdom to kick us off. What is it? How can it be gained? Or, Ervin, perhaps maybe, how can we become wise? What does wisdom mean to you?
Well, in this day and age, my reply to that is very clear and simple. Wisdom is to be aware who we are. And if we are aware who we are, then we know that we are the key to the destiny of humankind on this planet. Therefore, if we know who we are, and we know that we are key to the destiny, then wisdom is the responsibility to make the right choices. Wisdom is to be a conscious human being who can take evolution into his or her own hands. That to me is the beginning, and for now, the application of wisdom.
Oh, indeed, indeed. I mean, take responsibility into our own hands. I love that, because, if we think about the world today, it's full of a lot of noise and a lot of people, saying this is the way it is, and this is the way the world is, and this is what you need to know. And people just seemingly, if you ask me, Ervin, try to impart what they know. But what I found is that knowledge and wisdom cannot be received, but information can. So people are transmitting a lot of information. In my opinion, there's a lot of noise out there, but knowledge and wisdom, on the other hand, must be cultivated in each of us as the information is used and tested and practiced. In other words, knowledge becomes wisdom with experience. You don't necessarily gain knowledge and wisdom. Maybe you become it. And of course, the more we know, the more we really don't know much at all.
And to become, that's the key word, as you're just saying. To become the change you want to see in the world. That's what Gandhi said. So becoming wisdom means at the same time not only benefiting ourselves, it's benefiting the world around us. Because wisdom is something we can all discover. And the discovery in one person, bringing it to the level of consciousness, what we have inside of us, communicates to others. This is a non-local consciousness, as we now say in consciousness research and in quantum science, non-local. What is happening in our consciousness is communicated to yours and to others. But we have the receiver, but we need to tune it in, so to speak. We have to be able to receive that. So if we are becoming wiser ourselves, we can, in fact, to use the modern COVID term, in fact, with our wisdom, we can do that to others. That's our responsibility, to become wiser in ourselves, meaning more responsible, act in a way that we know we are the key to the future. Then I think our wisdom will penetrate to others and will be empowered by multiple powers of effectiveness, because together we can change this world, but we have to start working together. And the start is with each of us, with you and with me. Becoming
Yes, with
wiser,
each of us.
then I think we can change the world.
Yes, indeed. And I love how you shared that to receive so that we can become the wisdom that we want to see in the world, to become responsible for our actions and take the own initiative that each of us has. And in your new book, Ervin, The Wisdom Principles, you write, there are moments, epochs in human evolutionary journey when significant shifts in consciousness, understanding, and knowledge are required. You are living within one of these timeless, monumental transitional periods. And by any measure, we are now being invited to shift our consciousness away from what no longer serves humanity to living in harmony with ourselves, each other, and Mother Nature, in oneness, so to speak. Ervin, could you share a little bit more with us about this transitional period that we are in?
Well, we are already at a point of no return. The decisions we make now will not be easy, if at all possible, to reverse. This is what is known in the system sciences as a bifurcation, a tipping point. If we just take account a little bit of the news, even that now that is penetrating all over the world, the climate change, the heating up of the atmosphere, the warming, the global warming, and all the problems that is associated with that, ecological problems. But we are part of the ecology. We are part of society, and we are part of the biosphere. And we are putting this system, this whole biospheric web of life, into a crucial point of decision. And we have pushed it like that because we have acted unconsciously, not aware of who we are and not aware of what we are doing to the world. We thought we can do almost anything that's physically possible. But what's physically possible is not necessarily good in a psychological, in a social, and in an ecological sense. We have acted to exploit the possibilities without concern for others, saying we come first. It was the old slogan, America come first. The German Nazi slogan was, Germany over everything else, Deutschland über alles, and that led to the Hitler massacre and aggression in World War II. We cannot just simply think of ourselves on the short term. We have to think that we are part of a larger whole, the web of life, the whole life on Earth, which is probably part of life on the universe in other places as well. But we are here, and we have the only high-level conscious part. Surely all things are conscious, and all things have consciousness. But this high level of consciousness where we can recognize who we are and that we have consciousness, that we can act differently from the way we do, that we have choices, that is unique on this planet. Other species are beginning to come to that level. The whales, the dolphins, the elephants, the chimpanzees, they are coming close. But we are still the key at this point. And this is our responsibility, because this entire beautifully, delicately balanced web of life is now at a point where we can either disaggregate to its components and separate things out and we fall back really to eons and eons of time earlier, or we can move forward. We can move forward to a position where we are consciously living together with others. We are consciously attuned to the symphony of life, conscious to thrive. We can more than just live, survive, we can thrive. But we need to apply our consciousness, knowing that we are at a critical point, knowing that we are the key. Because let me just add this, Adam, I think it's very important. The knowledge, as you said, the information is in us. I call this information, to use a system science term, an attractor. And attractors in systems, are the things that create the dynamic setup, decide the dynamic, how the system behaves, depending on the set of attractors that we have. How this system of humanity behaves depends on attractors, and these attractors act on our consciousness. It's there in us. It's there in every quantum. It's there in every blade of grass, in every living thing. It's there in the galaxies. So to become aware of this, that we are a conveyor of this evolutionary impetus, that means that we live more consciously and more living up to our responsibility. It's a unique thing to have a species, to be member of a species that is consciousness, that is conscious. That's a tremendous responsibility. And now we are at a tipping point. We have to exercise this responsibility. Before, we could go along and we could try to patch things up as they came along. And we thought that we can live as the way we want, no matter what we do to the others around. That doesn't really count. Important is to gain our own advantages, serve our own interests. Now we can't do it anymore because the fallback, the feedback is dramatic. If we destroy the world, the life around us, we destroy our own basis for living. So I think it's a crucial time, and talks, discussions, conversations like we are having are essential tools in these days to say to people, join the conversation, be part of it, and be a conscious agent of evolution on this beautiful planet.
Well, what a beautiful invitation for all of us to become a conscious change agent for what must be done. Otherwise, the opportunities will pass us by very quickly.
What must be done can be done. That's the big thing. What must be done now we can do.
That's it.
To be grateful even to the COVID and to the ecological crisis for waking us up so that we can finally come to our senses and choose the right way forward.
Well, I always knew I needed a little kick in the you-know-what to get me on the straight and narrow and get to really take the responsibility to show up for the potentiality of our consciousness and the expansion to do the work that we must, to do it together. And you wrote a chapter, and you mentioned it just a minute ago, and I want to go a little deeper into this idea of bifurcation. And you entitled that chapter, Bifurcation, Your Chance to Shift the World. And, what a powerful statement, because it's each of us has that power and that chance to shift the world should we step into our responsibility and really show up most fully. And in that chapter, you begin by saying the science of systems and information are telling us that the crisis we are living through is a bifurcation, a sudden forking in the evolutionary trajectory of a dynamic system. And you go on, Ervin, to say bifurcations cannot be reversed. And this is key, but their outcomes are not predetermined. They allow a choice. Living in bifurcation, we can choose the way to go. This is a unique opportunity. For the first time in human history, we can consciously and purposefully choose our destiny. Wow. What are your thoughts about this new paradigm? And in particular, how can each of us really make this shift from old to new?
My thought is exactly yours. As you say, wow, this is an amazing point in human history, in the history of life on Earth, actually, because it's the power that we have through technology. We can help life to thrive, or we can destroy at least the higher forms of life. So it's all in our hands now. My thought is that, thank goodness, that something is giving us this kick in the pants, as you say. We are not going on the way we were, because if we would have continued the way we were, exploiting nature and creating adverse effects that can be more and more difficult to reverse, then we would reach a point where it would be difficult to reverse the livability of this planet. We could make it into a dried up, lifeless planet, like Mars. It apparently could have been a living planet some time ago, and then it became one. Who knows why? But we actually living on a planet that is highly capable of supporting life, but we are already creating massive extinctions of life. We are also creating conditions which are less and less supportive of life. So we have to know this. We have to recognize this. And what is blocking it? That's what we really have to know, to think about. The usual answers are, we don't have the power. I would say, yes, we do have the power, actually, to do what is necessary to keep this earth livable. And they say, we don't have the will. Well, that, I think, comes closer to the problem itself. We don't have what is known as the political will. But it's not just political will, it's the will to exist. It's the will to be on this planet, to persist here, to be a humankind, to be humanity on a living planet. So this is, I think, the problem. The blocking factor is what is sometimes called the mindset, or the mentality, or the psychology, or the worldview. In one word the word I prefer to use for this is a simple and powerful word, is the paradigm. What kind of paradigm are we living? Unfortunately, we are still living a Newtonian, Darwinian paradigm. I don't blame Newton and I don't blame Darwin, because they themselves knew better. But their followers didn't. Their followers enshrined some of their ideas and made them into a universal lexicon, into a guidebook of all things. For Newton, the idea was, for his idea, as we know in his books that are kept in the British Library still that were not published, but his major work was a mathematical treatise based on this idea, and it's only, as he himself said, touched the surface. The surface is that all things seem independent little mass points, and they interact across space and time, but they are separate. And then Einstein came in now in our day and said, separateness is an illusion. It's probably the greatest and most dangerous illusion that we have.
Yeah.
Now, Darwin himself, also a very deeply spiritual person, who wrote a lot about belongingness, even about love. But what his followers picked up was this idea of the survival of the fittest, as though the fittest would survive by force of power, by exercising raw power. Nowadays, we recognize that the survival is not of the fittest, but is the most cooperative. Cooperation means working together, living together, acting together, and having a close relationship to each other and to the world around us. Being fit, being cooperative, means having the power to love others around us as we love ourselves, to love nature, to love the universe, not for what it gives us, but what we can benefit by being a conscious part of that universe. So I think this great change from a Newtonian Darwinian paradigm to a new science paradigm, sometimes we call it a quantum paradigm, I think the new paradigm, to which I founded a research institute just to explore that, because it's extraordinarily important today to recognize this. This new paradigm says something very different. Based on the system sciences, it tells us that we are not separate, we are intimately and permanently interconnected, not just externally, so that I do something to you and you feel that you do something to me. That also happens, but we are instantly interconnected, because in this new paradigm, we recognize that what is here affects things there, not only externally, it makes them be as if they were also here. Point A is connected with point B. Experiments prove this. There's no question about it. So this is very different paradigm. It says we are one, we are connected. We now need to live as a connected oneness on this planet. That means live with understanding, with devotion, with dedication. Live so that we can be deserving to be a part of this evolution, which is, as you mentioned earlier today, this evolution which is toward complexity and coherence. Coherence means the fine-tuning of all things to all other things, the connection, the real connection. That is, I think, the key to our future. That is true. We are living in such an entity. We are such an entity. Now we have to create that paradigm, or live that the paradigm is there, but we have to live by that paradigm, which tells us that we are one. We can live as one, and then we can strive as one.
Well, thank you for that, Ervin. And I, yes, to strive as one. And, these are, as you know, and many of us are feeling this tremendous challenges of our times. And often we feel just stuck. And, you mentioned something I'd like to dive a little deeper in for our listeners, around what is, posing this question of what is blocking us. And we talk about mindset. We talk about functioning unconsciously in our disconnection from each other, ourselves, and in nature. And in my new book, The Divine Genius, The Unlearning Curve, I share 13 wisdom teachings that are kind of like, I describe as stepping stones, a map from that old version of ourselves into this new version, this emergent new human. Some call it the homo luminous, whatever you want to call it, universal human, whatever that is for you. But there's a journey and a bridging that we all are on in our evolution, hopefully consciously taking responsibility. And in my book, Ervin, I offer us a way to step up and beyond and into our individual and collective destiny. And to do that, I offer what I call the genius process of unlearning. And this practice of unlearning is as simple as this. We learn to gain understanding and survival with information that's in the world. And we unlearn to become wise and thrive with knowledge. And my hypothesis is this, and I want to get your thoughts on this, that we already have everything we need. We need do nothing. We don't need to gain anything to become fully conscious. We need only to shed what no longer serves us. And what that is that no longer serves us is that thought system, that mindset of the ego that just projects separation. And that we need only to go to the source that created that thought system of separation and choose differently, consciously, co-creatively with each other, with nature, with the quantum field. In other words, seek not to change yourself, seek to change your mind about yourself. Ervin, do you think we need to unlearn the mind that perceives ourselves as separate from everything, from nature, ourselves, and to make this big shift in consciousness? Do we need to kind of unlearn and let that mindset go?
We have to get rid of it, trash it as soon as possible, as thoroughly as possible. You know, you mentioned a shift up, a step up, actually, you said, and you mentioned your next book. I also have a book in preparation. I'm just finishing the manuscript, and it's called The Upshift. You know, and the subtitle is Thriving on Planet Earth, you know, because this is the bright, what I call the bright alternative. The negative alternative is to go down, or the downshift. The upshift is possible. But the first lesson is, and I see that, and we have not talked about this before, but we are thinking alike anyway. The first thing is to learn to forget, so that we can be somehow a little bit different from what we used to be, fundamentally different. Our chances are good. We have everything here. We have gone off on a false tangent, really on a wrong trajectory of our evolution. Past, difficult to say when, but ever since perhaps Newton's and Darwinian epoch, 250 years ago, we started thinking in terms of separation, in terms of selfish own interest, ego interests, and started applying our enormous technological powers and rapidly evolving technological powers to serve these narrow, self-centered ends. And we have taken apart the integrity, the coherence of the world around us. We have created a world of conflict, of competition, and of win or lose, and increasingly problems and decays and crises. This is not the only crisis that we have had, and this is not the last crisis that we will have. But how good or how bad are these crises? Good crises are those that wake us up, but don't demand a life sacrifice. Don't demand us to give up our role of being the conscious species on the planet. A bad step forward would be a bad crisis, would be a fatal crisis. We can avoid that because we are now in time and we are now waking up. It's tremendous what goes on, whether we look at the G20 declarations, the COP26, or the various meetings that go all over the world today. The pledges that industrial nations are now beginning to make. Hopefully they keep them also. All these questions are now up in the air, up in the open air. We are facing them. And we know that we have the power to shift. We don't need to shift mountains. We have to shift our own mind, our own consciousness. That, I think, is a lesson we have to learn. And we better clear the deck to do that. We have a lot of obsolete beliefs and ideas. In my book now on the wisdom principles, I list some of these obsolete beliefs and convictions that we better get rid of. On the positive side, we can tune in. We can be one with life, because that is our deep nature. We just have to bring it up to our consciousness. So what we learn is not from the outside. We learn from ourselves. We learn to listen to our deeper self. And that is something that we can do, we must do. And I think it's beginning to be done. There is a new culture arising in the periphery. It's moving toward the center, because increasingly we are questioning, people are questioning the old culture of domination, of selfishness. Questioning, is that the way forward? And once you do start doing that, then you open your mind to the alternative. There are alternatives. You and I, we are spelling those things out. We have many others around us do that. We just have to start taking a pause for a moment. Yes, indeed. Stop the earth. We can stop it. For a moment, we can stop evolution and we can take stock. Where are we at a critical point? What can we do? Do it because we have the power in us to do it. That, I think, is the lesson. And I think we are beginning to do it, but let's do it faster. Let's spread it faster. It's absolutely crucial that we be that critical mass, that small group that the anthropologist Margaret Mead said, small, never thought the power of small groups to change the world. We need to be that small group. We need to create small groups like that all over the world so that they could come together, network, and start being the change around them, being the change they want to see. Then I think the world, humanity, the mentality, the paradigm will also change.
Well, absolutely, to be that change, and the small group is so potent and so fertile, and I'm certainly finding that in my community and those that are reaching out, and so many are wanting to join into that place, that cauldron, so to speak, that cauldron that is a quickening of sorts that you're speaking to, because of the call, I believe, of our ecological nature, but also the invitation biologically and psychologically to really leap, to kind of pause and then, embrace this great evolutionary miracle that's upon us. And you wrote in your book, I think this was one of the more intriguing chapters that I enjoyed. There's so many, by the way. We could talk about a lot of things, but you wrote a chapter called "The Spiritual is Not Necessarily Fantasy. It Could Be Real." And you pose this idea, Ervin, that so-called spiritual phenomena could be real, a part of the real world. And you go on to say, there is a widespread fallacy today in the world if we do not perceive something, and if we cannot account for it in relation to the perceivable world, we say that it doesn't exist. This is a fallacy, you say, because the real world is far wider and deeper than we thought. I love that. There could be an entire dimensions of reality we do not perceive and yet are real. Now, what we have known as the spiritual world could be such a dimension. Could you share a little more with us about, what is real? I mean, what is not real? What is that true nature of reality?
Well, the true nature of reality, according to the new quantum sciences, quantum physics, quantum cosmology,
yes,
is not bits of matter coming together or pushing each other left and right. Reality is fundamentally a field of information, a field of vibration at different frequency. Nikola Tesla said himself, this great pioneer, if you want to know something about the real world, think in terms of frequencies, not things, but wave propagations. And these waves, how they can join together, how they can create larger waves, how they can be in phase and appear as though they would be something material. But again, another great physicist of our time, Max Planck, said in his last talk in Frankfurt, Germany, I believe, he said, I can tell you after 40 years of studying the nature of matter, I can tell you this much. In the last count, there is no such thing as matter. Coming from a physicist, that's an amazing statement. But other physicists like Schrödinger and Pauli, and then Gustav Jung, the psychologist, they would agree. There's nothing hard and indivisible in this world. Everything is basically interactive. Everything is based on resonance rather than a raw force. So we resonate with each other. then we communicate with each other. We establish our communication. The whole world is an information network, a quantum network, a quantum field. Sometimes this field is the unified field, well, grand unified field it's called. It has been presaged by Hindu seers several thousand years ago, and they talked about the Akasha, the Akashic domain. And nowadays we can talk about the Akashic field. That's perhaps as a metaphor, and it's something that we believe in a semi-fanciful way. But underneath there is something true, because all things are connected. All things are instantly connected over time, across time and space, beyond time and space. There is no real separation. And so we are constantly what we are, a part of this resonating network, a network which is moving, evolving toward greater and greater complexity, greater and greater coherence. Even the transitional periods of chaos actually are avenues, are openings for additional coherence, for new coherence to emerge. If a system doesn't go down in a bifurcation, it moves up. It becomes more complex, becomes more coherent, more powerful in a way, in terms of power of ideas. So that just takes me to the last thing I wanted to say in our conversation. You mentioned Margaret Mead about saying that there's nothing as powerful. We don't doubt the power of a small group of people to change the world. Another great spiritual person, a novelist and thinker, Victor Hugo. He said, there is nothing as powerful in the world as an idea whose time has come. And that is our hope. That is our great chance. The time has come for the idea that we are the architects of our destiny and that we are living in a bifurcation where change has become possible. The established centers are no longer as powerful to lock in change. They are open to change. They have to be open to change. Otherwise, they fall by the wayside. So this is a powerful idea, nothing as powerful as this. We can change. We can change because we are going through a crisis, which is at the same time a transformation. We are at the hinges of a new era. We are at the very, very threshold of entering on it. Exciting, tremendously exciting and powerful idea.
Tremendously exciting and powerful. And Ervin, thank you so much for that wisdom. And I love that we're exploring the particle and the wave, and here we are, it's all one, and we have this powerful capability consciously, so long as we take responsibility, as you share, to really embrace that journey and the coming together of that. And it's interesting because what I have found that in this idea of the quantum physics and what's now emerging in the new science, I think of it from a shamanic perspective. The shaman perceives the world of form and the formless as a unified quantum field. In other words, it's not one or the other, it's both. And it's not two worlds, it's one world, so to speak. It's one reality. And as you beautifully shared, our new science, our quantum science, is now bearing this out. Because my sense is, and maybe in just a few concluding thoughts here that we can share, that shamanically speaking, it doesn't matter what is real. It's really what matters is your ability to perceive both the physical world for what it is, well, not, and the spiritual world for what it is. And in other words, the shamans and the sages kind of toggle between the physical and the non-physical world. And in that journey, life becomes more about physics and less about purely living in the physical world. And you beautifully have shared that, we are living in extraordinary time. Our connection to the Akashic field is an invitation for us to be in our truest power, our truest sense. And I really appreciate that all that you have shared here today. There's so much more that I would love to talk to you about going further, because you share in the wisdom principles so much about consciousness and that it's beyond the brain phenomena. And before we kind of circle it in, is there anything that you may want to share around this idea of consciousness and the beyond the brain phenomena? I think many of us would be most interested in hearing your wisdom about that.
Our consciousness is far more extensive than we think. It's not something that's generated by our brain. Consciousness is a phenomenon in the universe. We are part of that phenomenon. That's the overall system of which we are a projection or a fragment, if you like. Our mind is really a fragment of the consciousness of the cosmos, as it were, of this unified field. Now, for spiritual, I just want to add one more word before we close, Adam. We are now have some scientific proof. People are asking for actual proofs. Yes, there are scientific measurable proof that non-ordinary information, non-ordinary experiences can surface of the kind, or like a near-death experiences, even in after-death experiences, like love, people who are close to each other, who are lovers or mothers and son, etc. They are connected beyond the everyday world. These phenomena occur at a wavelength of the EEG electroencephalogram spectrum at a wavelength lower than alpha, below the alpha, the theta, even down to the delta level. So it seems that these phenomena occur, but our ordinary mentality, our ordinary state of our brain doesn't pick it up. And if we don't see something, then we believe it doesn't exist. And if we believe something that doesn't exist, then we also won't see it. If we're really skeptical, then we just don't see it. So it's time to start seeing that our consciousness is far wider, it's more communicative, it embraces more of the world, it embraces some of those spiritual realities. Not everything that is said in the spiritual world, some of it is fanciful fiction, but many of the things about connection, about oneness, about communication are real and true. And that means that our spirituality is also a conveyor of information, not only our everyday world. Let's enlarge our world, enlarge our identity. We are much more than we thought we were. And the universe is much more connected than we thought it is. It's a remarkable world. We are at a key point. Let's use this information, let's use this knowledge to be a positive impetus so that this world will develop to the next level, to shift up rather than shift down. It can't stay the way it is, it has to shift someplace. Let's shift it up.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Ervin. And I think what would be great, I want to circle it in with you because you wrote a concluding thought, and I want to bring that presence that now for all of us and in the wisdom principles. And if you haven't picked it up yet, folks, please do. It's a treasure trove of very practical, very deep wisdom that is helping to guide humanity into its next evolutionary thrust, which is fast emerging. So we want to be able to adapt and be ready for all those great things that are coming our way. And you conclude this thought by saying, owning our immortal consciousness, we have always been here and we will always be here, a real, existent entity in the universe. Our life need not be a preparation for death. It can be a celebration of eternal life. Wow. Wonderful. Well, folks, our time has been rich and full. and so much to explore together. And we want to thank everybody for being here and tuning in. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy of the Wisdom Principles. Check out Ervin and what he is doing and with his work. Ervin, people want to kind of check into your website, or where would they find out more about things that you're doing?
Well, there is a site, several sites. The Ervin Laszlo books.com. There is the LaszloInstitute.com. There's also ervinlaszlo.com. So if you just put my name onto Google or wherever your browser, you'll find a number of alternatives. But the latest book is published by St. Martin's Press, and you'll find it on their site as well.
Well, thank you for all of that. Please check all of that out. And these are extraordinary times, and it's been great to be here with Ervin Laszlo. We live in an elegant universe, folks, where everything is possible and nothing is impossible. And I think the greatest risk of all is not risking anything. Our moment is now, and together we can build a better world. Let's do it. Blessings and Godspeed to all of you.